Jack Daniels. So that's the kind of guy Frank was. I worked with a gentleman named Bob Johnson, who worked with Frank Sinatra in Australia. Bob is a trumpet player, and told me a wonderful story. He said they loved working with Frank Sinatra. Frank had these wonderful, wonderful arrangements. And he said the way this would work is Frank Jr. was the conductor. He would come in and rehearse the orchestra in the afternoon. And then when it was time to do the show, the band would be assembled, of course, and playing. And when it was time for Frank, he would pull up in a limousine, and they knew it was Frank because a red carpet was laid out, all the guards were there, and Frank would march out and walk right on. He said it was amazing to see how well orchestrated Frank had this whole operation laid out. He would walk out to the tune of Where or When. And he said it was timed so perfectly, it was incredible. He said, so we're playing there in Australia. I believe it was Melbourne. And he said the concert was going great. And, of course, Frank would end the concert with My Way. During the rehearsal that afternoon, the lead violinist had a little trouble with the ending of My Way. And they worked on it quite a bit. However, he said that evening as they're playing My Way and Frank is into it, just as they get ready for the big dramatic finish where you hear just a couple chords from the violin, the violinist messed up and messed up bad. And he said Frank turned around, walked over to the violinist, leaned over and said, they call it practice. Turned back to the audience and said, I did it my way. He said the audience got up on their feet. They were applauding. Everybody's going crazy. Frank takes one bow, and Frank is out of there. And, of course, the audience is standing and applauding, but Frank is gone. Just as Frank arrives at the last minute to begin the concert, he leaves at the first minute to get out of the concert. And this fact was confirmed to me via information from a gentleman named Wiley, who runs a comedy club in Dayton, Ohio, who is a good friend of Tom Dreesen. Tom Dreesen, who was the opening act for Mr. Frank Sinatra for many, many a year. Tom Dreesen relayed to Wiley the following story, that when Frank would finish a concert, he would leave the concert hall, get into a limousine, go right to the airport, and fly away, and actually be flying around the city drinking Jack Daniels, laughing about the fact that everybody was still there applauding, probably waiting around for his autograph. Tom Dreesen also tells another story that Wiley relays that I love, which is that he was staying with Frank in Palm Springs. And he said sometimes Frank would just go, hey, Tom, let's go get a drink. And they would go to some little place because Frank didn't like going to the bigger places because he would be bothered by people and autograph hounds and what have you. And he said, so we went into some little joint in Palm Springs, and we're at the bar, we're drinking. And he said a lady walks in, walks up to the bartender, and says, do you have a jukebox? He said, madam, I'm sorry to say we don't have a jukebox. Tom said, Frank turned to the lady and said, hey, lady, I'll sing for you. And she looked at him head to toe and said, no thanks, and walked out of the place. He said, myself, the bartender, and Frank all looked at each other, and we all started laughing because, of course, she didn't realize he was Frank Sinatra. Or maybe she did. One time I went for a commercial reading in Los Angeles, and I was coming out of the building where I had done the reading, and a guy said to me, how would you like to see Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr.? I said, of course, I'd love to see them. I mean, I was a little flabbergasted that a total stranger would say this to me on the street. He said, well, man, let me tell you something. They're right around the corner, and if you get over there, you can see them. Well, I didn't know what he was talking about, but I said I better take a look. Lo and behold, as I walked around the corner, right in front of Chasen's restaurant, there is Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr., and a crowd of people. And they're all moving into the restaurant, and it's all just jam-packed. So I thought I might look through one of the windows, so I sort of walked over around to where the parking lot was, and there's an entrance there. And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, guess who comes out that side door? Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. And they're all dressed in tuxes, and they all walked outside to smoke. They all started smoking. I just sort of waved to them, and they waved to me back. And suddenly, all around me, there was this throng of people. They were there to announce their big concert where the three of them would be playing across the United States. This was their big press conference. I thought this was all pretty funny because they started asking them questions. Sinatra seemed very irritated by everybody. Martin was just like Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. was doing most of the talking. And I remember a big laugh came when one of the reporters asked, do you think you'll draw as many people as Michael Jackson? And Dean Martin said, Michael Jackson, he's black, isn't he? I don't know why, but
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.